Listen, we're only done with 2 weeks of fantasy football, and there's already like 6 NFL teams that have different starting quarterbacks in week 3 than they had in week 1. Well, maybe it's 5. It just depends if the Dolphins want to suck with Fitzmagic or suck with Rosen. How does it affect the wide receivers? Let's find out our starts and sits for week 3. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios. Today, we're talking about pass catchers. And I mentioned it in the opening. There's new quarterbacks on 6 different teams, depending on what the Dolphins want to do. And it's only week 3. And that can have some pretty negative impacts on some fantasy-relevant wide receivers. So that's what we're going to be going through today, the starts and sits for Week 3 fantasy football. Now, before I get into all the matchups, real quick, just a quick reminder, if you're a DFS player, if you're looking to become better at DFS, don't miss out on the opportunity. We have it available on our Patreon page now. It's basically like a DFS school. We're not just giving out players' names and random lineups. We're teaching you how to be a better DFS player. You can go check out my Twitter feed, Kyle's Twitter feed, Ryan's Twitter feed. We're absolutely killing it on the DFS side right now. So if it's something you're interested in, there's a link down below in the description. Go check it out. But for now, let's see how we did in week 2 so then we can move on to week 3. Now, you guys know by now that we're pretty transparent. We're going to let you know how we did the week prior. So last week, week 2, wide receivers, we had 71 start-sit designations total, in which we got 51 of them correct for a percent of 72% accuracy for week 2. Some of our biggest hits, Brandon Kirks, Christian Kirk, Tyler Boyd and John Ross, Cole Beasley, DK Metcalf, all correct accuracy guesses. Some of our biggest misses, Emmanuel Sanders, Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods, Mecole Hardman, and then the pass catchers of the Patriots, not named Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, and Julian Edelman. They didn't really need them much in the second half because their defense helped them get out to a huge lead. But those were some of our biggest misses here for week 2. But now, let's get into week 3 and see what we can find out. Let's see how accurate we can be here going forward. All right, Thursday Night Football, the matchup of the offensive powerhouse juggernaut passing game of the Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, none of these guys are going to be must-starts, but there's a few names that I'm a little intrigued on. I mean, A.J. Brown of the Tennessee Titans. We don't know if Jalen Ramsey is going to be a Jag on Thursday or not. Some reports say yes, some reports say no. So it remains to be seen, but A.J. Brown, the more consistent wide receiver, in my opinion, in this offense. This is not an offense that can support multiple wide receivers, mainly because Marcus Mariota kind of sucks. But A.J. Brown has that upside. He has the touchdown upside. He has the big play upside, and he's slightly more consistent in this offense. Chris Conley, same thing. More of a deep league flex, multiple flex league, but he's the safer option for the Jaguars ever since Gardner Minshew took over. Now, off topic real quick, can you imagine if Baker Mayfield wore that same outfit that Gardner Minshew wore off the airplane the other day? I mean, Baker would be roasted alive. People see Gardner Minshew do it. Dude is like an epic quarterback of all time. I mean, people love it. And it is. It's fun to watch, and the guy is actually balling at times. However, another one of these offenses that just can't support multiple wide receivers. DJ Chark is definitely a wide receiver I love. I loved him coming out of the draft. Didn't really love him going to Jacksonville. He is more just touchdown dependent. If he doesn't get that touchdown on a weekly basis, he can kind of hurt your fantasy team because he just doesn't see enough targets. Same thing now all of a sudden with Dede Westbrook, who since Gardner Minshew took over has really kind of regressed as far as targets go. He doesn't really see that many. Chris Conley has become the safest option as far as pass catchers in Jacksonville. Those are the only 2 options that I would consider, but it's deep leagues only. I expect a heavy dose of the run game by both teams here on Thursday night. Bengals and Bills up now, and this one could get interesting for a few fantasy teams out there, I'm sure. John Brown and Cole Beasley both starts for me. John Brown, the big play guy, highly involved in this offense, great chemistry with Josh Allen, the legit wide receiver 1 of the Buffalo Bills. Not a weekly must start, but definitely flex worthy in most leagues, especially deeper leagues, PPR leagues. Cole Beasley, he's not the type of guy that's going to go out and catch 10 balls for 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not his style. But in deeper leagues, flex plays, PPR leagues, he is the type of guy that can go out there and get you 7 catches for 75 yards, 14 PPR fantasy points, and you're happy on Sunday. Now they're going up against a middle-of-the-pack secondary of the Cincinnati Bengals, right now ranked 15th against opposing wide receivers. I like both of these guys this week. Now, on the Bengals side of the football is where I get a little bit different. John Ross was somebody who maybe week one I thought was he's just big play dependent. If he doesn't go out there and get you the big touchdown, he's going to hurt your fantasy team. Well, now he's seen 20 targets through 2 weeks, and it's starting to turn out to be John Ross is a legit weapon in this offense. Partially because he's finally catching the football, not dropping everything that goes his way. And plus, now we're starting to see him more involved in the short to intermediate routes, which then he can use his game-breaking speed to then turn around and break a big play, not just reliant on the deep ball. And that's like a whole nother level of John Ross, and that's why I have him as a start, because it's a pretty difficult defense of the Buffalo Bills. They're the 7th toughest defense against opposing wide receivers. And that's kind of why I'm sitting Tyler Boyd. I expect him to be matched up with Tre'Davious White on the opposite side there in the defense of Buffalo, and I can really see Buffalo trying to take away Tyler Boyd. Why is that? Well, the running game's already banged up, right? Joe Mixon isn't 100%. If he plays, he'll get 50% of the snaps about. Gio Bernard get the other half. I mean, we already know the run defense of Buffalo is top 10 in the NFL also. I'm worried about Tyler Boyd this week. Now, you may not have any other choice. So if you have no other choice, Tyler Boyd, you may have to just roll the dice on it. I'm just limiting expectations, limiting the upside, because this is a really tough matchup for him. Lions and Eagles up now, and we're going to start both wide receivers once again in the Detroit Lions. If one thing is true about the Philadelphia Eagles defense, it's a lot easier to throw against them than it is to run against them. It's kind of why I'm a little bit worried about the running game of the Detroit Lions this week, but I'm not at all about the passing game. I would expect TJ Hawkinson to be involved here also, but Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, 2 guys this week with huge upside. Kenny Golladay has produced for fantasy teams here for a couple weeks, and I expect more of the same this week. The only issue that I have, and this is where the sits come in for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're dealing with a lot of injuries to their pass catchers. Deshaun Jackson's already been ruled out. Alshon Jeffrey, we don't know. Dallas Goedert dealing with a calf strain issue. There's problems in Philadelphia on the offensive side of the football. If for some reason Detroit can get a lead, then maybe they start, relying on the run a little bit. But where that gets difficult, as I just mentioned, Detroit holding on to a lead. It's still the Lions, and I still expect this to be a fairly close game, even though Philadelphia is without a lot of their top weapons. Kenny Golladay, though, he'll be involved all 4 quarters. Marvin Jones, a little bit more riskier than Kenny Golladay, but still has that big upside, that big play potential, that big touchdown upside in this offense. If Philadelphia can find ways to score, Detroit's going to throw the ball for 4 quarters, and I like the upside of Golladay and Jones. As for the Philly guys, you can see it here. Their battling injuries are already ruled out. Not worth touching. Nelson Aguilar is a name that's going to come up a lot, but being that he's really their only option, I'm sure he'll draw Darius Slay on the opposite side of the football, and for that reason alone, it has me worried. Hopefully you're not reliant on Nelson Aguilar here in Week 3. Jets and Patriots up next, and kind of like usual, right? At least for the first 2 weeks. If they're in a Patriots uniform, you kind of have to start them. I mean, the upside is just too huge. This week, it's no different. Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, if you got them, they're starts for me this week. Going up against the New York Jets, the Jets who may have Luke Falk as their starting quarterback. The part that worries me about that a little bit is if New England can get a fairly large lead in the first half, maybe they rely on the running game more in the second half with Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, stuff like that, and some of their wide receivers get their upside limited, kind of similar to what happened in Miami last week. However, don't forget, defense played a big part in getting that big lead for the Patriots last week, so it really depends how the defense plays for the New England Patriots. Now, it's a little bit awkward, I'm sure, to see Robbie Anderson starting here under the start column and Jamison Crowder sitting. The reason I did that is I do expect New England to have a lead in this ballgame. The Jets are going to have to throw all 4 quarters. When Luke Falk came into the game on Monday Night Football after Trevor Siemian went down, the one wide receiver that he really locked onto was Robbie Anderson. I can see him getting close to double-digit targets this week. Now, does he have that wide receiver 2 upside? Yeah, he does. The problem is he's still risky. However, he showed pretty good chemistry early on with Luke Falk, and definitely in deeper leagues, flex play upside, maybe even DFS plays, I like Robbie Anderson this week. Like I said, they're going to have to throw for 4 quarters. Jamison Crowder really seemed like he was going to be the PPR guy, the guy getting the bulk of the volume in this offense. But without Sam Darnold under center, it's just not the same dynamic. He's going to be a sit for me. But Robbie Anderson, it would not surprise me to see him break a big touchdown play here in Week 3. Raiders and Vikings up next. And for the starts, you're going to start Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Now, you're not overly excited with the start to Adam Thielen. Trust me, I get it. However, this is a pretty good matchup for him. Going up against the Oakland Raiders, they're the third easiest team for opposing wide receivers as of right now. And this offense for Minnesota is amazing on the ground. But they need to get the passing game going. Kirk Cousins and these receivers need to get on the same page. This could be the perfect opportunity for them. The Raiders, a lot tougher to run on than they are to throw on. Do I mean that Dalvin Cook is going to struggle? I think Dalvin Cook is almost matchup proof at this point, but we can't sit Thielen and Diggs in a positive matchup like this at a time in which the offense is trying to really get jump-started. When this offense finally clicks, they're going to be scary, and you don't want to have one of those guys on your bench when it happens. As far as Tyrell Williams goes, this is definitely something we need to pay attention to. It's a difficult matchup. Yeah, he'll probably draw Xavier Rhodes on the opposite side. He's not 100% healthy, though, so make sure you're monitoring the injury report with Tyrell Williams. If he's limited at all throughout the week, even going into the weekend, I'm going to fade Tyrell Williams, have him as a sit this week, and hopefully that he can get healthy and come back week 4. Baltimore and Kansas City up now, and we already know what the Chiefs' offense is, but the Ravens are just setting the league on fire right now behind Lamar Jackson. Hollywood Brown, he's legit, and I love seeing him get 13 targets last week. He's an absolute must-start for me here this week, going up against the Chiefs in a game in which Baltimore, they're going to have to throw the ball all 4 quarters because the Chiefs are going to score points. Now, speaking of the Chiefs, what do we do over there? I have Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, and Demarcus Robinson all listed as starts. But we need to tread lightly here. I've seen questions already. What if I have 2 of these guys? Should I start them together? I don't ever start 2 players from the same position on the same team in a matchup each week. I don't want to do it. That's too much tied up into one position. However, each of these guys stand alone as a possible flex play. The upside is absolutely huge, especially if the Ravens can find some openings and get an early lead and force Patrick Mahomes to throw more than just the first half of the ballgame. This could be a huge shootout going back and forth. The problem is, which one of these wide receivers is it going to be? We've seen a huge outburst from Sammy Watkins. We've seen a huge outburst for Demarcus Robinson. Is this Mecole Hardman's week? It's possible. The guy is a mini Tyreek Hill, like a diet version Tyreek Hill. Could be his turn. The problem is we don't know which one it will be. Somebody's going to have a big game. Take a risk on it possibly. Throw him in your flex spot because it could totally pay off and help you win your fantasy matchup. Falcons and Colts up now, and you're obviously going to start Julio Jones. The biggest downfall to Julio over the year, dude doesn't score touchdowns. Well, you know what? Dude's scoring touchdowns this year, and he's doing it in huge play fashion. Love Julio Jones once again. Calvin Ridley, another one of these guys that's basically a weekly must start at this point as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 area, maybe even a flex. Just because so much defensive attention is going towards Julio, Calvin Ridley finds himself in a lot of one-on-one opportunities that he can easily win. Now, T.Y. Hilton, I have listed as a start also. It's a little bit of a difficult matchup here against the Falcons, and I kind of give him some limited expectations. Now, T.Y. Hilton, if he gets you that touchdown, you're very happy. However, he's not putting up the huge yardage number, so if those touchdowns aren't there or when they stop, because you cannot count on a weekly touchdown every single week, it could hurt your fantasy team. That's kind of where I'm worried with T.Y. Hilton. I don't see that touchdown coming this week. It's entirely possible. He's more of a flex play at best, a lower tier, wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 for me this week. It's hard to bench T.Y. Hilton. I got him as a start, just limiting those expectations. Now, Paris Campbell had his first career touchdown last week. We actually had him listed as a start last week. He just missed hitting those double digits for the week, but he's not seeing enough volume, I don't think, to be a weekly must-start. We saw some great matchups potentially last week. Expected him to get more volume. Got the touchdown, not the volume. So until we see that volume progress, he's going to remain in that SID category. Broncos and Packers up now, and we're definitely starting Devontae Adams. Also, a lot of people relieved to see him have a great game last week. But we're also going to start Emmanuel Sanders, somebody who I had as a sit last week, going up against the Chicago Bears. Well, they force-fed Emmanuel Sanders the football, and if that's the case, 20 targets through 2 weeks, Emmanuel Sanders kind of becomes one of those guys. It's a weekly flex play with huge upside, especially in a game in which the Packers offense, if they can get out to a lead, is going to force Flacco to throw the ball a lot. Like as much as he did last, like over 50 times a lot. they could see a heavy dose of the passing game in Denver. Emmanuel Sanders, in my opinion, the safest option there for the Denver Broncos, have him as a start. Also, now on the sit side, I'm going to sit MVS and Geronimo Allison. Neither one of these guys are going to blow you away with production on a weekly basis, and until one of them can clearly solidify that number 2 role, which seems like it's MVS, but the volume just isn't there to trust on a weekly basis, not going to risk it with either one of those guys here in week 3. Courtland Sutton, somebody who a lot of people like, and I think talent-wise, I love Courtland Sutton. The problem is he is very touchdown dependent because the volume still isn't there for Courtland Sutton. If he doesn't get that big play, that big 50-yard catch, that big touchdown, Courtland Sutton will help lose your fantasy week for any given moment. Until that volume can become more consistent on a weekly basis, Courtland Sutton is somebody with huge upside, but it's a huge risk, and I'm not willing to take that risk this early in the season. Dolphins and Cowboys up next, and continuing the theme here of starting everybody against the Dolphins. Same thing goes for the wide receivers here of the Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper, yeah, he's going to be a must-start this week. He could get absolutely peppered with targets early because there is no Michael Gallup, who will be out of this game. In my opinion, that bumps up the safety production of Randall Cobb. Now, a lot of people want to throw the name Devin Smith out there because of the big play he had last week. And does he get a bump in volume? Yes. Does he get a bump in value? Yes. Can we really count on it after one game? Not as much as I can count on Randall Cobb. At least I know the volume, the targets will be there for Randall Cobb. And at least in PPR leagues, gives me that safe floor. Devin Smith may be highly dependent on that big play, and just because he's made one doesn't mean I'm ready to throw him into a lineup. Maybe a DFS play as a cheaper option, yeah. But in my redraft, my season-long leagues, no, not going to happen. As far as the sits go, anybody in a Dolphins uniform, it's not worth it, not risking it. I don't care who it is. People want to tell me about, oh, yeah, Preston Williams, and oh, what about Devontae Parker, Fantasy Bigfoot? No, not happening. Not interested. Thank you, pass. Giants and Bucks up next, and we're going to start Evans and Godwin, kind of weekly must starts. A lot of people irritated with Mike Evans after struggling for 2 weeks. First game of the season, he wasn't 100%, wasn't feeling good, had an illness. Second game of the season against the Carolina Panthers, it was a wet, rainy Thursday night game. Yes, Chris Godwin has been going crazy, and right now is the safer option, but we can't bench Mike Evans just yet, especially going up against the New York Giants. Now, on the Giants side of the football, I don't even know if they're going to have any wide receivers. I mean, we don't know if Sterling Shepard's going to come back yet. Cody Latimer's banged up. I mean, if anything, you may want to head to your waiver wire and grab a Golden Tate if he's available, because now with Daniel Jones under center, I think Tate's upside takes a slight uptick once he comes back from suspension. But this week, not tempting it, not starting anybody from New York. Evans and Godwin, though, in a great matchup against the Giants, I'll take it. They're both starts. Panthers and Cardinals are next. I'm going to start both Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. I don't know if you've noticed yet, not a whole lot of people talking about Kyler Murray. He's not blowing away the record books by any means, but he does have 2 straight 300-yard passing games, and they throw the ball a lot in Arizona, and they're very up-tempo. What does that have to do with the wide receivers? Well, they run more offensive plays than the average NFL team, which gives these multiple wide receivers the chance at double-digit targets throughout the game. Both Kirk, both Fitzgerald, they have that double-digit target upside on a weekly basis. Fitzgerald, huge touchdown upside because they look for him once they get inside the 20s. Both of these guys are going to be starts for me here in week 3. Now, a lot of people are going to scratch their heads and say, well, what about DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel? There's a chance that Cam doesn't play. And the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers could be Kyle Allen. A lot of you are like saying, who is Kyle Allen? Exactly, but here's why I still would start DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. 1, the defense for the Arizona Cardinals is absolutely horrible, still without their top 2 corners on the year. And I can really see them relying more on the short routes, the short to intermediate routes, a lot more Christian McCaffrey, a lot more DJ Moore underneath, Curtis Samuel on the short crossing routes. They may not have huge yardage numbers, but I can see a lot of receptions in this game, just trying to get the ball out of Kyle Allen's hands quickly. Get the ball in the hands of the playmakers, and let's see what happens. Going against a poor Arizona Cardinals defense, as flex plays only, DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel still have upside. Steelers and 49ers up next, and this is tough with no Big Ben for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So now you got Mason Rudolph under center, and I think it hurts Juju's value. Is he totally worthless? No, not by any means. I think Juju was an elite top 12 wide receiver. Now, he's more of a wide receiver, 2-tier wide receiver. He's going to take a little bit of a hit. And in this game, he's going to be matched up with Richard Sherman. So I'm really limiting expectations for Juju. But I do like James Washington, especially as a flex play in deeper leagues. Why? Don't forget, Rudolph and Washington went to college together and played great together. At times, in his first start here, does Mason Rudolph kind of revert back to what he's comfortable with, to what he feels is safe? That could be James Washington, and if you have the cojones to start him, he could have a huge day. It's just a risk. So deeper play, flex plays, maybe wide receiver 3s in some leagues, James Washington has some huge upside. For the San Francisco 49ers, it's really only Deebo Samuel as a possible flex play. He kind of emerged as the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this offense last week. Dante Pettis has all but disappeared, and Deebo has looked great. What makes that weapon so great, those passing weapons for the San Francisco 49ers, is the run game. It really opens up the outside because there's so many more one-on-one opportunities for these wide receivers. And Deebo has proven to be able to beat that one-on-one coverage, and Jimmy G looks for him. So the flex play, love Deebo Samuel. Marquise Goodwin, he's more of the big play, home run, touchdown-dependent play. He's not going to see the volume, the targets on a weekly basis. They're all going towards Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and the running backs out of the backfield. Marquise Goodwin, too risky for me, not going to start him here in week 3. Saints and Seahawks up now, and it's the Saints without Drew Brees. It's going to be Teddy Bridgewater under center, and a lot of people are worried about what happens to Michael Thomas. I'm not really worried about Michael Thomas. Teddy Bridgewater is not new to the New Orleans offense. He's been there. He understands it. He's the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL. I think last week, being thrust into the game in the middle of the game, he wasn't quite prepared like he should be. Now, a full week of practice, a full week of reps with the number ones, I think he comes out and shows a lot of improvement here this week, especially against a Seattle secondary that just got torched by Andy Dalton a couple weeks ago for over 400 yards. Michael Thomas may not have the huge yardage games, but he's going to be locked on to him by Teddy Bridgewater. The reception numbers could be huge for Michael Thomas here in week 3. On the Seahawks side, I'm going to start Tyler Lockett. Good to see him get double-digit targets this past week. And DK Metcalf has kind of proven to be semi-reliable. A lot of people after the draft are like, the dude can only run the go route. Well, he's doing a little bit more than that, and he's scoring touchdowns. DK Metcalf as a flex play, especially in deeper leagues, not a bad option this week. Like I said, I expect the Saints to be able to move the football and still score. If that happens, Russell Wilson, he's going to be forced to throw. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, the top 2 options in that offense, got them both at starts. Texans and Chargers up now, and a lot of names to talk about in this one, but it's kind of obvious, right? If you have DeAndre Hopkins or Keenan Allen, they should be in your lineups. They're obvious must-starts every single week. Mike Williams was supposedly dealing with injuries. He was kind of a game-time decision last week, came out, played, didn't have a huge game, but was making huge catches all over the field. He looked healthy, so he's somebody that we really need to pay attention to. If he gets a full week of practice in, he kind of goes right back into that wide receiver 3 territory for me, a flex play, because the upside is going to be there in a game against Houston, which we already know that Houston can move the ball also. Now on the sit side, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller, Kiki QT, they're all kind of canceling out each other's volume. There really isn't a clear number 2 here. A lot of people expected Will Fuller to go absolutely crazy. The problem is there's big plays going all over the place, and it's not really just going to a second guy after DeAndre Hopkins. It's super hit and miss, and it's a total risk to start any one of these 3. Each of these 3 could have a big play, have a big game, but figuring out which one it's going to be, it's too hard, it's too risky. Week 3, I'm going to sit all 3 of those guys. Rams and Browns up next, and pretty straightforward. If you have one of the big 3 Rams wide receivers, you're going to start him. You can't afford to sit him because the upside on any given big play or week is just too much of a gamble to have on your bench. So Cooks, Woods, and Kupp, all of them should be in lineups all over fantasy football league. Same goes for Odell Beckham. You drafted him in the 1st or 2nd round. He had a huge game for you on Monday Night Football. The return of OBJ trying to silence some haters. Looked great on Monday Night Football. He's an obvious must start. What I'm more worried about is kind of Jarvis Landry, and it's not really his opportunities because he's getting the opportunities. The problem is I never expected to see him struggle with dropping the ball as much. A lot of passes going his way. Maybe some of them are difficult catches. I get it, but those are catches that Jarvis has come down with in the past. And now, I don't know if it's just a little bit of a lack of confidence, or maybe he's not expecting as many targets because Odell is on the field. Whatever it is, Jarvis Landry just doesn't look how he has in the past. And until we can see him get more of that fire, more of that consistency back, he's going to be on the sit list for me here in week 3. Monday Night Football, you got the Bears and the Redskins, and neither one of these teams are offensive juggernauts when it comes to throwing the football. They're struggling at times. However, I'm still willing to risk a little bit on Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver for the Washington Redskins. I mean, we just saw Emmanuel Sanders torch the secondary of the Chicago Bears, and Terry McLaurin has looked great his first 2 weeks in the league. I mean, through 2 games, he has 10 receptions, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The guy is making big plays all over the field, and he has the attention of Case Keenum. Is he a surefire lock must start? No, he's not. But deeper leagues, he has the upside and is really showing promise here on a weekly basis. As far as the sits go, until Mitch Trubisky can really come back and prove to be more consistent, I'm not going to start Allen Robinson, not this week, especially since he'll draw Josh Norman. I'm not really interested in taking that gamble in week 3. Paul Richardson, very touchdown dependent. Outside of Terry McLaurin, maybe Trey Quinn at times. Paul Richardson's not somebody that I'm really interested in even owning at this point. Terry McLaurin seems to be the legit wide receiver 1 here in Washington and the one that's going to see the bulk of the work going forward. All right, those are my starts and sits here for week 3 fantasy football for the wide receiver position. Let me know what you think down below. We try to get to as many questions as we possibly can, trying to help people win fantasy leagues all over the world. I mean, heck, I looked the other week and it said we've been in like 47 countries in the last 28 days. That's absolutely amazing. Love the way that Headliner Nation is growing. We greatly, greatly appreciate the support of you, the viewer out there. So make sure, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the comment button down below. Just let us know what you think of the show. Maybe you're new here. If you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel and then let us know that you're new down below. We'd love to welcome you here to the channel. Really appreciate, once again, all the support. You guys have a great rest of your week. Talk to you later.